By the time most elite footballers are earning their first senior minutes, one player had already rewritten history. At 15 years old, he became the youngest player in over a century to appear for his storied club side. He came on as a substitute that day, showed no visible nerves, and never looked out of place for a single second. Within a year, he'd become a regular contributor for one of the most demanding clubs in world football. His home stadium supporters adopted a nickname for him early, one that stuck through every record that followed. At 16, he became his national team's youngest ever player, scoring on debut in the very same match. Weeks before turning 17, he scored one of the goals of a continental championship in a semi-final no less. He lifted that same continental trophy the following weekend, becoming its youngest ever winning player. By 18, he'd already finished runner-up for the sport's most prestigious individual annual award. He lost that specific vote to a fellow countryman, a teammate turned rival for the same individual honor. Finishing runner-up at that age, ahead of dozens of established stars, was itself treated as a genuine achievement. Heading into this World Cup, his first expectations were enormous, built on 3 straight years of history-making. A hamstring injury threatened to derail that debut entirely, ruling him out of his team's opening matches.
He recovered in time to feature, and it took him only until his first goal to add yet another record.
Keep that early history in mind. What this tournament revealed was almost more interesting than another record. His first World Cup goal arrived just 11 minutes into a comfortable group stage win, precisely on cue. At 18 years and roughly 11 months old, it made him his country's second youngest World Cup scorer ever. Only one of his own teammates from a previous tournament had managed the feat at an even younger age. Historically, that alone would have been the headline, another teenage record for an already record-filled career. This tournament, though, had other plans. 2 other teenagers had already gone younger before he even got there. One, from a West African debutant nation, scored in stoppage time at just over 18 years and 4 months. That specific goal came against one of the tournament's traditional powers, adding real weight to the moment. The scorer had barely featured before that match, making the milestone even more unexpected to casual viewers. His own federation had never previously reached a World Cup at all, adding another layer to the achievement. Another, from a Balkan side making its own historic run, scored even younger still, days after that. By the time this specific player scored his first World Cup goal, he'd already been pushed down to 9th youngest ever. That's a genuinely unusual situation, setting a personal milestone that's already been quietly overtaken twice. It says less about him falling short and more about just how deep this specific generation's talent pool runs. The outright record, set by a Brazilian legend in 1958, remains untouched by any of them. That mark, scored at 17 years and under 9 months, has survived nearly 70 years of attempts. That legendary player went on to win 3 separate World Cup titles across a career that reshaped the sport. No player since has come within a full year of matching that specific youngest scorer mark, despite countless attempts. It's one of the rare records in football considered close to genuinely untouchable, given how youth football has evolved. None of this tournament's teenage scorers, despite their own records, have seriously threatened that specific number. It's worth remembering that his own personal path there still beats some of the sport's more recent legends outright. He reached his first World Cup goal younger than 3 of the tournament's other most decorated active players. Those 3, combined, have scored dozens of World Cup goals across multiple tournaments spanning nearly 2 decades. He's just getting started, at an age when most of them hadn't even made their World Cup debuts yet. That timing gap is part of why so much long-term expectation sits on a player still technically a teenager. His semi-final contribution came without a goal at all, a detail easy to miss given his usual scoring headlines. He drew the foul that led directly to his team's opening penalty, the moment that effectively decided the match. That's a different kind of impact than a highlight reel goal, but arguably just as valuable to the final result. Impact stats rarely capture a moment like that cleanly, even though it directly created his team's entire lead, and that quiet decisiveness pattern shows up repeatedly across his career. That pattern gets easily overshadowed by the flashier moments, the curling strikes, the outrageous dribbles. Both versions of his game are real, and both have shown up repeatedly across this specific tournament. This broader wave of teenage talent isn't unique to one player or one country at this tournament. Multiple debutant and established nations alike have leaned on teenagers in genuinely significant roles this summer. Better youth development systems, earlier professional debuts, and modern sports science likely all play some part. Data-driven scouting now identifies elite young talent earlier than it did even a decade ago across more countries. Sports science around injury prevention and recovery also allows some young bodies to handle senior minutes sooner. None of that guarantees a generational talent. It simply widens the pool of players given a genuine early chance. It's difficult to isolate one single cause, but the pattern itself across this tournament is genuinely hard to miss. A generation that debuted professionally earlier than most of their predecessors is now arriving on this stage together.
That's a meaningful structural shift, not just a handful of unrelated coincidences happening in the same summer.
Whether it continues at this pace in future tournaments is something only time and future rosters can confirm. For now, this specific tournament offered an unusually clear snapshot of that shift happening in real time. This particular player remains arguably the most decorated teenager among an unusually crowded teenage field. European champion, runner-up for the sport's top individual prize. Now, a World Cup finalist, still only 19. Very few players in the sport's history have accumulated that specific combination before turning 20. Even fewer have done it while sharing headlines with other teenagers threatening some of the same records. That competition, even among teammates and peers, likely pushes each of them to develop even faster, a genuinely healthy dynamic for the sport. Fans a decade from now may remember this tournament less for one player and more for an entire generation's arrival. That's a different kind of legacy than a single record holder achieves, but not necessarily a smaller one. Generational shifts in football tend to get remembered by the tournament where they first became unmistakable. For a wide cluster of teenagers scoring, assisting, and deciding matches, this one looks like a strong candidate. None of that erases the individual brilliance on display from any one of them, this specific player included.
Both things can be true. A standout individual talent inside a genuinely unusual wave of similar young talent.
His path from here likely includes plenty more tournaments, records, and headline moments across a long career. 19 years old with this resume already complete, leaves an enormous amount of runway still ahead of him. Whether he ends up the generation's defining name or simply one of several is a question only time can answer. This tournament didn't need to answer that question to still be remarkable for what it already demonstrated. A teenager drawing the decisive penalty in a World Cup semifinal is remarkable on its own, record or no record.
The records simply add a layer of historical context to a performance that would matter without them anyway.
That's arguably the healthiest way to view a player this young. Judged by performance first, record second. Records fade in relevance as more players inevitably break them. Genuine performance under pressure tends to hold up. A drawn foul in a packed stadium under semi-final pressure doesn't fade the same way a numeric footnote eventually does.
That's the version of this story most likely to still matter once the specific age records are inevitably broken.
This player has, so far, delivered both in roughly equal measure, at an age when most are still developing either.
That's a genuinely rare combination, even setting aside the specific age at which he's managed to produce it.
Whatever the final match of this tournament brings, his own personal story already stands on solid ground. European champion at 17, World Cup finalist at 19, a resume most players never complete in a full career. That timeline alone justifies the attention, independent of whether any single record technically still belongs to him. How the final chapter of this tournament plays out for him is, deliberately, a separate story. What's already certain is the shape of the path that got him there, regardless of anything still to come. A generation of teenagers arrived at this tournament together, and he stood among the very best of that group. Being the best of an unusually strong group is its own specific, genuine kind of achievement worth recognizing. It doesn't require being the single youngest scorer or matching a 70-year-old record to still matter enormously. Football has a habit of remembering moments and performances longer than it remembers exact age record footnotes. Years from now, casual fans will likely remember the penalty won in a semifinal far more than the specific age. That's probably the right order of priorities, even for a player whose entire early career has been built on records. Records got him noticed. Performances, at increasingly bigger stages, are what's kept him there. That's a healthier foundation for a long career than records alone could ever provide on their own. That distinction matters more with each passing tournament, as the records inevitably keep shifting to someone newer. Someone else, even younger, will eventually break most of the specific numbers currently attached to his name.
That's simply the nature of age-based records, built specifically to be broken by whoever arrives next.
When that happens, what remains will be the moments, the penalty won, the trophy lifted, the final reached.